Millionaire is fired in front of 147 employees for losing 4.9B from the company, but a poor 7-year-old girl silences everyone with one word. Before we reveal this poignant story of loneliness and pain, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. The mahogany table stretched endlessly before Marcus Wellington, its polished surface reflecting the cold fluorescent lights of Pinnacle Industries' 42nd floor conference room. At 42, Marcus had built his fortune from absolutely nothing, a farm boy from rural Nebraska whose calloused hands had once milked cows at dawn before catching the school bus. Now those same hands, manicured and steady, gripped the termination papers that threatened to destroy everything he'd spent 23 years building. $4.9 billion, Marcus. The voice belonged to Harold Blackstone, the silver-haired chairman whose family had controlled Pinnacle for 3 generations. His icy blue eyes showed no mercy as he adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. Gone, vanished into thin air, because of your catastrophic miscalculations with the Meridian Electronics acquisition. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls that surrounded the conference room, 147 employees pressed against the windows like spectators at a public execution. Their faces displayed a mixture of shock, morbid curiosity, and genuine fear for their own futures. Marcus could see Jennifer Patterson from accounting, her mascara streaking down her cheeks as tears fell freely. There was Tom Rodriguez from maintenance, slowly shaking his graying head in disbelief, his work uniform still bearing yesterday's coffee stain. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These were real people with mortgages, children's college funds, and dreams that hung in the balance of decisions made in rooms exactly like this one. The Meridian deal was financially sound, according to every analysis we conducted, Marcus said, his voice maintaining its characteristic steadiness despite the visible tremor in his hands. He'd built his reputation on never showing weakness, even when the world crumbled around him. Market volatility of this magnitude couldn't have been predicted by any reasonable forecast model. Couldn't have been predicted. Jonathan Steele, another board member and Harold's longtime ally, slammed his manicured palm against the polished table with enough force to make the crystal water glasses jump. His face flushed red with indignation. Your legendary arrogance and reckless decision-making just cost us everything. The employee pension funds, the planned expansion projects, the research and development initiatives, all of it destroyed because you thought you were smarter than the market. The heavy conference room door creaked open with a sound that seemed to echo through the tense silence. A small figure slipped inside, moving like a shadow despite the attention her presence immediately commanded. 8-year-old Lucy Chen stood barely tall enough to see over the massive conference table, wearing a faded yellow dress that had clearly seen better days and clutching a crumpled piece of paper against her chest like a shield. Her dark, intelligent eyes surveyed the room with a maturity that seemed far beyond her tender years, taking in every detail of the corporate power struggle unfolding before her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely rising above a whisper, but somehow carrying enough authority to freeze every person in that room. "I think you're making a terrible mistake about Mr. Wellington." Harold Blackstone's aristocratic face turned a shade of crimson that matched his expensive silk tie. The veins in his neck bulged as his voice boomed across the conference room with enough force to rattle the windows. "Security! How in God's name did this child manage to get past 3 levels of security and into our private board meeting?" His outrage was palpable, filling the air like toxic smoke. Lucy flinched at the volume, but refused to retreat even a single step. Instead, she moved closer to the intimidating table, her small fingers gripping the crumpled paper even tighter until her knuckles turned white. The courage required for an 8-year-old to stand her ground against some of the most powerful men in corporate America was nothing short of extraordinary. "Please, sir," Lucy said, her voice gaining strength as she looked directly into Marcus's steel-grey eyes. "My mom works in the data processing department on the 34th floor. She's been working all night long on something really important that she called the numbers that don't add up right. She specifically sent me to find Mr. Wellington because she said he was the only one who would listen to the truth even when it sounds impossible. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat, then begin racing with unexpected hope. Sarah Chen was indeed one of their most meticulous and brilliant analysts, a woman whose razor-sharp mathematical mind could spot discrepancies and patterns that escaped even the most sophisticated computer algorithms. During his meteoric rise to power within the company, Sarah's invaluable insights had saved him millions of dollars on more than one occasion, and her quiet dedication had never gone unnoticed or unappreciated. "Young lady," Jonathan Steele's voice dripped with condescension thick enough to cut with a knife, "this is not some kind of playground or daycare center. We're dealing with extremely serious adult financial matters that determine the fate of thousands of people. You need to leave immediately." "The Meridian Electronics purchase," Lucy interrupted with surprising authority, carefully unfolding her wrinkled paper to reveal neat rows of numbers written in her mother's distinctive handwriting. "You bought their entire company for exactly $2 billion because they claimed they had developed revolutionary battery technology that would change the world, right?" Her small voice carried an unexpected confidence that made every adult in the room fall completely silent. Marcus nodded slowly, his analytical mind suddenly engaged despite his dire circumstances. Through the glass windows surrounding them, the crowd of employees strained forward, pressing closer to hear what was unfolding inside. Security guards approached the conference room door but hesitated when they saw the riveted expressions on the board members' faces, sensing that something truly extraordinary was taking place. "My mom spent the entire night digging through old financial reports and patent filings," Lucy continued, her dark eyes never wavering from Marcus's face. "She found something really important hidden in their documents from before you bought them. They were spending millions and millions of dollars on completely fake research projects. But here's the really important part. The real technology, the stuff that actually works, they had already sold it to someone else 3 whole years ago." The conference room fell into a silence so complete that even the soft hum of the air conditioning system seemed deafeningly loud. Harold Blackstone's angry expression began a slow transformation from rage to confusion, his aristocratic features contorting as he tried to process this unexpected information. Jonathan Steele leaned forward in his leather chair, his earlier condescension replaced by genuine curiosity despite his obvious reluctance to take a child seriously. Marcus extended his hand across the massive table with fingers that trembled slightly, gently taking the precious paper from Lucy's small, trusting hands. The document felt fragile, like it might crumble at any moment, but the information it contained could potentially change everything. Sarah Chen's handwriting was immediately recognizable. Precise, methodical columns of figures, patent registration numbers, and carefully documented dates that painted a picture none of the sophisticated financial analysts had managed to see. "Phoenix Dynamics," Harold Blackstone muttered under his breath, fumbling for his gold-plated smartphone with hands that suddenly seemed unsteady. "I've never heard of any company by that name in our industry analysis reports." But you have heard of them," Lucy interrupted softly, her voice carrying the patient tone of a teacher explaining something obvious to confused students. "They just changed their name really recently. It happened last month, actually. Now they're called something different." She scrunched up her face in concentration, clearly working hard to remember the exact details her mother had shared with her. They're called Quantum Solutions International now. And that's the same company that Mr. Wellington sold half of Pinnacle's old semiconductor division to just last year." The blood drained from Marcus's face so rapidly that he felt momentarily dizzy as the pieces of an incredibly complex puzzle began clicking into place in his mind. He distinctly remembered that sale. He'd disposed of what everyone considered outdated semiconductor technology for what seemed like a modest but reasonable one. $2 billion, believing it was legacy equipment with limited future value. But if Lucy and her brilliant mother were correct in their analysis, Jonathan Steele was already frantically typing on his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard with desperate urgency. After several tense minutes of research, he looked up with an expression of complete shock. "Dear God in heaven," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "QSI's stock price has increased by an astronomical 340% in just the past 6 months. According to the financial news reports I'm reading, they're scheduled to announce a revolutionary battery technology partnership with Tesla next week that will fundamentally change the automotive industry." Through the glass walls, Marcus could see the crowd of employees gathering even closer, their faces pressed against the windows as they sensed the dramatic shift in atmosphere within the conference room. Sarah Chen appeared at the back of the crowd, her face etched with exhaustion from working through the night, dark circles under her eyes revealing the sacrifice she'd made. When she caught sight of her daughter through the window, she pressed her hand against the cold glass, tears of pride and worry forming in her tired eyes. "So when Meridian collapsed and we apparently lost the $49 billion, Marcus said slowly, his analytical mind working through the staggering implications, they were already essentially bankrupt from a technology standpoint. Their supposed breakthrough innovations were completely worthless because they had sold all the genuine intellectual property years earlier. Urdu sold it to a company that you now indirectly control through the QSI acquisition deal," Harold Blackstone added, his voice filled with growing amazement and what might have been the first hints of respect he'd shown in years. Lucy nodded with the serious demeanor of a professor delivering a crucial lecture. "Which means Mr. Wellington didn't actually lose any money at all. He accidentally bought the fake company, but he already owned all the real technology. So the $49 billion loss is actually..." She carefully consulted her mother's precise calculations one more time. "Actually, it's $7 billion gain when you add up everything properly." Marcus stared at the remarkable little girl who had just completely turned his world upside down and inside out. His hands shook uncontrollably as he reached for his secure phone, immediately dialing his private team of elite financial analysts. The board members sat in stunned silence around the massive table, their earlier confidence and righteous anger crumbling like ancient sandcastles before an unstoppable incoming tide. "Drop everything and get me a complete analysis of Phoenix Dynamics, Quantum Solutions International, and every single one of their battery-related patents," Marcus barked into the phone with renewed authority. "Cross-reference everything with our QSI acquisition from last year, down to the smallest detail. I need comprehensive answers on my desk in exactly 10 minutes, not 11. Through the conference room's floor-to-ceiling glass walls, word was spreading like wildfire among the gathered employees. Marcus could observe excited whispers passing from person to person, people frantically pulling out their smartphones to share the developing news, and the entire energy of the crowd shifting dramatically from despair and fear to electric anticipation and hope. Lucy climbed onto one of the massive leather executive chairs, her small frame completely dwarfed by its imposing size, her legs swinging freely as she settled in. "My mum always says that the really smart bad guys like to hide their most valuable stuff behind fake companies and shell corporations," she explained matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather rather than billion-dollar corporate fraud. She spent the entire night following complicated money trails and paper companies because she absolutely knew you weren't stupid enough to lose that much money by accident. She said you're too smart for that. Harold Blackstone loosened his silk tie with shaking fingers, his face pale as he contemplated the enormous implications of what they were discovering. "If this information proves to be accurate, we have just publicly humiliated and terminated our most valuable executive based on completely incomplete and misleading information. The media coverage alone will destroy our reputation and credibility. Actually, the media coverage will demonstrate that Pinnacle Industries employs the most brilliant and visionary strategic mind in the entire business world." Jonathan Steele interrupted, his tone completely transformed from hostility to admiration. He was staring intently at his laptop screen, watching QSI's stock price climb steadily in real-time trading. Marcus, do you fully realize what this means? You didn't just avoid bankruptcy. You've positioned our company to dominate the entire renewable energy sector for the next decade. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His elite analyst team's preliminary report was already confirming exactly what Lucy and her dedicated mother had discovered through their all-night investigation. Phoenix Dynamics had indeed sold their revolutionary solid-state battery technology to QSI in 2021 for $800 million. QSI's recent corporate name change and Marcus's strategic acquisition the previous year meant that Pinnacle Industries now controlled patents and intellectual property worth an estimated $12 billion. But how did you know to acquire QSI in the first place? Harold asked, his voice now filled with newfound respect and genuine curiosity. That acquisition seemed almost random and inexplicable at the time. None of us understood your reasoning. Marcus met Lucy's knowing gaze across the polished table, seeing wisdom far beyond her 8 years, reflected in those dark, intelligent eyes. Sometimes, he said quietly, his voice filled with profound gratitude, the most brilliant strategic moves look exactly like costly mistakes until someone else helps you see the much bigger picture. The heavy conference room door burst open dramatically as Marcus's senior analyst team rushed inside, their arms loaded with laptops, tablets, and stacks of printed documents. Lead analyst Rebecca Martinez, normally the picture of composed professionalism, displayed barely contained excitement that made her hands shake as she set up her laptop to project onto the room's massive wall-mounted screen. "Marcus, you absolutely have to see this," she gasped, her voice breathless from running up 42 flights of stairs when the elevator seemed too slow. "The QSI patents we acquired don't just cover basic battery technology like we originally thought. They hold the fundamental, foundational patents for solid-state energy storage, quantum charging systems, wireless power transmission, and something called perpetual charge architecture that could revolutionize everything." Lucy continued swinging her legs from the oversized executive chair, calmly watching the adults scramble frantically to understand what she and her brilliant mother had figured out hours earlier through careful detective work. "Mum said the really important legal papers were hidden in something boring called subsidiary acquisitions and tertiary holdings," she added helpfully, her young voice cutting through the corporate chaos with simple clarity. The massive projection screen illuminated the room with patent documents, complex financial flowcharts, and detailed technology specifications that made even the most experienced board members' eyes widen in amazement and disbelief. Marcus studied the overwhelming information carefully, his strategic mind racing through possibilities and opportunities he hadn't dared imagine when he'd woken up that morning. "According to our comprehensive analysis and market projections," Rebecca continued with growing excitement, "every single major automotive manufacturer in the world is going to desperately need this technology within the next 24 months. Tesla, Ford, General Motors, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, they'll all be forced to license our patents or risk becoming completely obsolete in the rapidly evolving electric vehicle market." Harold Blackstone stood up abruptly, pacing nervously behind his chair as the magnitude of the situation became clear. "The Meridian purchase was never actually about buying their technology," he said slowly, puzzle pieces falling into place in his mind. "It was about definitively confirming they didn't possess what they claimed to have, while we already secretly owned all the genuine innovations through QSI." But through the glass walls, Marcus could see that the crowd of employees had grown substantially. Word was spreading throughout the entire building, drawing people from every department and floor. Security guards maintained their positions, but their protective stance had shifted from concern to curiosity as they realized something extraordinary was unfolding. Sarah Chen had somehow made her way to the very front of the crowd, her exhausted face now glowing with maternal pride as she watched her remarkable daughter explain complex financial concepts to billionaire board members with natural ease. Jonathan Steele pulled up detailed market projections on his tablet, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Conservative financial estimates put our complete patent portfolio value at approximately $15 billion, he announced. But aggressive projections based on market penetration and licensing fees. He paused, double-checking his calculations to ensure accuracy. Aggressive projections suggest we could realistically be looking at revenues exceeding $30 billion over the next 5 years alone. Lucy raised her small hand politely, exactly like she was sitting in her third-grade classroom asking permission to speak. "Excuse me, but doesn't this mean all those worried people outside get to keep their jobs now? My mom was really concerned about her friends losing their homes." Marcus walked slowly to the massive window, looking out at the sea of anxious faces pressed against the glass like flowers turning towards sunlight. 147 dedicated employees who had watched him receive termination papers just an hour earlier now waited with bated breath to learn whether their own fates would be sealed. Behind their worried expressions and tired eyes, he could see the weight of real responsibility. Families depending on steady paychecks, mortgage payments that couldn't be missed, children's college funds that represented years of sacrifice, and carefully nurtured dreams that hung precariously in the balance of decisions made in corporate boardrooms exactly like this one. He turned back to Lucy, who was now contentedly drawing on a paper napkin with a worn crayon she'd somehow produced from her dress pocket. Her small tongue stuck out slightly in concentration as she worked on her artistic creation with the intense focus that only children possess. "What are you drawing there, sweetheart?" Marcus asked gently, his voice soft with genuine curiosity and growing affection for this remarkable child who had changed his life. "It's a picture of you and my mom," Lucy said proudly, holding up her napkin artwork for everyone to admire. Two carefully drawn stick figures stood next to what might have been a tall building, both wearing enormous smiles that took up most of their circular heads. "Mom always tells me that you're different from the other important bosses because you actually listen to her ideas when everyone else just ignores her because she's not American-born." Utile. The simple, innocent drawing hit Marcus with more emotional force than any financial report or profit projection ever could. He found himself thinking deeply about Sarah Chen's incredible journey, a brilliant woman who had immigrated from Taiwan 15 years ago with nothing but fierce determination, a gift for mathematical analysis, and dreams of building a better life for her family. He had hired her when other companies consistently overlooked her impressive credentials because of subtle prejudice, and she had quietly, consistently saved him millions of dollars with her meticulous attention to detail and analytical insights over the years. Harold Blackstone cleared his throat uncomfortably. His earlier hostility completely evaporated and replaced by something resembling genuine remorse. "Marcus, we owe you not just an apology, but our deepest gratitude and respect. Your strategic vision and decision-making have just secured Pinnacle's financial future for the next generation and beyond." Jonathan Steele nodded emphatically, his transformation from enemy to ally now complete. "The board would like to formally rescind your termination immediately and offer you an unprecedented new position. Chief Executive Officer with complete autonomy over all strategic acquisitions and corporate direction." Marcus felt the enormous weight and significance of this pivotal moment, but his eyes remained focused on Lucy's cheerful crayon drawing. "I'll accept, but only under one non-negotiable condition," he said, with quiet but absolute firmness. "Sarah Chen receives an immediate promotion to Senior Strategic Analyst with her own dedicated research team and budget. Additionally, every single employee currently gathered outside receives a substantial bonus, not for maintaining confidentiality about today's events, but for being part of something truly extraordinary that will benefit everyone. D. Through the glass walls, Sarah Chen's hand flew to cover her mouth in shock as whispered news of her promotion spread rapidly through the crowd. Employees began applauding spontaneously, though they couldn't hear the specific words being spoken inside the conference room. Lucy finished adding final touches to her drawing and carefully slid it across the polished table to Marcus. "Mom always says the very best treasures in life are hidden in places where nobody else thinks to look for them," she said with 8-year-old wisdom that seemed to contain depths far beyond her chronological years. Marcus picked up the precious crayon drawing with reverent care, knowing he would have it professionally framed and keep it prominently displayed on his desk forever. A constant reminder that sometimes the most profound insights and life-changing revelations come from the smallest, most unexpected voices, and that true success is measured not just in profits, but in the ability to lift others up along the journey to greatness. The remarkable little girl who had walked into a corporate boardroom to save her mother's job had just changed the entire course of a billion-dollar empire. 3 weeks after that life-changing morning in the boardroom, Marcus Wellington stood before the largest press conference in Pinnacle Industries' 70-year history. Camera flashes exploded like lightning across the packed auditorium as reporters from every major financial publication leaned forward in anticipation. The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Bloomberg, Financial Times, and dozens of international business magazines had all sent their most experienced journalists to cover what many were already calling the most spectacular corporate turnaround in modern business history. But Marcus's attention wasn't focused on the media circus before him or the hundreds of cameras broadcasting live to millions of viewers worldwide. Instead, he found himself searching the crowded room until his eyes landed on a small figure in the front row. Lucy Chen, wearing a brand new blue dress her mother had bought specially for this momentous occasion. Sitting proudly beside Sarah, who now bore the prestigious title of Senior Strategic Analyst and commanded a dedicated team of 12 brilliant researchers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the confidence and authority that had made him legendary in financial circles throughout his career. 3 weeks ago, I was publicly terminated for what appeared to be the worst acquisition decision in corporate history. Today, I stand before you as CEO of a company that now controls revolutionary technology worth over $30 billion. The room erupted in excited murmurs and frantic note-taking as journalists struggled to process the magnitude of this transformation. Behind the scenes, however, Marcus knew the real story was far more complex and dramatic than any newspaper headline could possibly capture. The past 3 weeks had been an absolute whirlwind of intensive legal battles, comprehensive patent validations, and high-stakes strategic negotiations that had tested every single skill he'd developed during his 23-year journey from Nebraska farm boy to corporate leader. Phoenix Dynamics' former executives had emerged from the shadows like vengeful spirits, threatening expensive lawsuits and demanding massive compensation for what they aggressively claimed was sophisticated corporate espionage. Their lawyers had descended on Pinnacle Industries like vultures, filing injunctions and sending threatening letters that filled Marcus's desk with legal documents requiring immediate attention and strategic responses. "The question everyone wants answered," called out Rebecca Thompson from the Financial Times, her authoritative voice cutting through the noise and commanding attention from the entire room, "is how you knew to acquire QSI when everyone else in the industry saw it as outdated technology with limited future value. Was this incredible foresight and strategic brilliance, or simply the luckiest mistake in business history?" Marcus smiled, remembering Lucy's simple but profound wisdom about hidden treasures and the importance of looking where others don't think to search. "Sometimes the most valuable discoveries come from the most unexpected sources," he replied diplomatically, his words carefully chosen to protect the privacy of the Chen family while acknowledging their crucial contribution. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. This remarkable success belongs to every single employee at Pinnacle Industries, especially those who work tirelessly behind the scenes to uncover the truth when others might have given up hope. In the front row, Lucy beamed with 8-year-old pride, completely unaware that major automotive executives from Detroit, Stuttgart, Tokyo and Seoul were already scheduling emergency board meetings to discuss licensing deals that could fundamentally reshape the global transportation industry. Sarah Chen squeezed her daughter's hand gently, still amazed at how their desperate late-night investigation had triggered an avalanche of consequences that continued growing larger and more significant with each passing day. What the assembled press corps didn't know, and what Marcus had carefully kept strictly confidential through his legal team, was that Phoenix Dynamics' original research team had contacted him privately just 2 days earlier. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the brilliant scientist who had actually developed the revolutionary battery technology that was now making headlines worldwide, had been systematically cheated out of her patents by corporate executives who'd sold her innovations while keeping her trapped in endless non-disclosure agreements and intimidating legal technicalities. "Mr. Wellington," Dr. Morrison had said during their secret meeting in his private office, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion after years of legal battles. "I've been fighting for 7 long years to get proper recognition for my work and restore my professional reputation. When I heard about your acquisition and Lucy's discovery, I realized you might be the only person with enough power and integrity to help me get the justice I deserve." Dr. Elizabeth Morrison sat across from Marcus in his newly redesigned executive office, her weathered hands clutching a worn leather briefcase that contained 7 years of meticulously documented evidence. At 56, she bore the exhausted, defeated look of a brilliant scientist who had watched helplessly as her life's work was stolen by corporate predators more interested in quarterly stock prices than scientific integrity or ethical business practices. "They promised me absolutely everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she opened the briefcase with trembling fingers to reveal hundreds of technical documents, printed emails, legal correspondence, and detailed laboratory notes. "Recognition for my groundbreaking research, substantial funding for continued development, a permanent position leading the innovation team, even equity participation in the company's success. Instead, they systematically erased my name from every single patent filing while using my discoveries to build their entire corporate empire." Marcus studied the overwhelming evidence carefully, his analytical mind processing the disturbing implications of what Dr. Morrison was revealing with increasing anger and disbelief. The documents painted a deeply troubling picture of corporate fraud that went far beyond simple patent theft. This was systematic, premeditated destruction of individual careers for corporate profit. Phoenix Dynamics had built their entire business model around identifying and stealing innovations from vulnerable researchers like Dr. Morrison, then selling those technologies to legitimate companies like QSI while keeping the original inventors trapped in legal limbo through intimidation, frivolous lawsuits, and deliberately complex contractual language designed to confuse and overwhelm people without expensive legal representation. "The solid-state battery technology that everyone's talking about in the news," Dr. Morrison continued, her voice gaining strength as she pulled out a thick folder of technical specifications and prototype designs. "I developed that revolutionary system in my garage after Phoenix fired me for asking too many uncomfortable questions about patent ownership and profit-sharing agreements. I've been trying to prove it's my intellectual property for 3 years, but they have teams of lawyers and unlimited legal budgets, while I have student loan debt and a mortgage I can barely afford. Through his office windows, Marcus could see construction crews working industriously on the new research facility that would house Pinnacle's dramatically expanded technology division. The $200 million project was being funded entirely by the unexpected windfall from the QSI patents, and he'd already hired 43 of the industry's top scientists and engineers, offering them unprecedented research freedom and substantial equity participation. But something about Dr. Morrison's heartbreaking story made him realize that money and state-of-the-art facilities meant absolutely nothing without ethical leadership and a genuine commitment to protecting the people who create innovations that change the world. "What would justice look like to you, Dr. Morrison?" Marcus asked, setting down the disturbing documents and giving her his complete, undivided attention. It was the same focused, respectful listening approach that had made Sarah Chen trust him years earlier, and that had convinced Lucy to walk courageously into that boardroom 3 weeks ago. "I want my name restored on the patents where it rightfully belongs," she replied with quiet dignity that commanded respect despite her obvious exhaustion. "I want proper recognition for my team members who were also systematically cheated and had their careers destroyed. And I want to continue my research without constantly looking over my shoulder for lawyers trying to silence me with frivolous lawsuits and financial intimidation." Marcus made a decision that would have completely shocked the board members who'd tried to fire him just weeks earlier for supposed incompetence. "Dr. Morrison, I'm prepared to offer you something far better than simple justice. I'm offering you true partnership and the resources you deserve. Pinnacle Industries will establish a completely new division called Morrison Advanced Technologies, with you as Chief Technology Officer and principal shareholder. We'll provide a $50 million research budget, complete legal protection, and we'll launch a comprehensive legal campaign to restore proper attribution on every single patent that was stolen from you and your team." The exhausted scientist's eyes filled with tears of relief and disbelief as she processed what Marcus was offering. After years of fighting alone against a system specifically designed to protect corporate interests over individual creators, someone was finally offering her the support, resources, and recognition she needed to continue changing the world through her innovations. 6 months after the boardroom revelation that changed everything, Marcus stood in the gleaming, state-of-the-art laboratory of Morrison Advanced Technologies, watching Dr. Elizabeth Morrison explain complex quantum charging principles to a group of visiting executives from Tesla, Ford, General Motors, and BMW. The scientist who had once been systematically silenced and marginalized by corporate bullies now commanded the complete respect of the entire global automotive industry, her revolutionary innovations driving partnership negotiations worth billions of dollars. "The breakthrough isn't just in energy storage capacity," Dr. Morrison was saying, her voice confident and authoritative as she gestured toward a prototype battery no larger than a standard smartphone. "It's in unprecedented charging speed and extraordinary longevity that will fundamentally transform transportation economics. This battery can power an electric vehicle for 800 miles and recharge to 90% capacity in under 4 minutes. More importantly, it maintains that exceptional performance for over 500,000 charge cycles without significant degradation." The visiting automotive executives exchanged glances that Marcus immediately recognized from his own early days of high-stakes negotiation, the carefully controlled expressions of people trying to maintain poker faces while processing information that could completely revolutionize their entire industry. Elon Musk himself had personally called Marcus the previous week, requesting an urgent private meeting to discuss exclusive licensing arrangements that could give Tesla a decisive competitive advantage. But the transformation Marcus treasured most was happening in a completely different part of the building. Through the laboratory's floor-to-ceiling glass walls, He could see into the employee childcare center that Pinnacle had established using substantial profits from their rapidly expanding technology licensing deals. Lucy Chen sat at a small table surrounded by colorful art supplies, patiently helping other children with homework assignments while their parents worked late shifts in various departments throughout the sprawling complex. Sarah Chen had passionately insisted on the child care center during the extensive company reorganization meetings, pointing out that many brilliant employees struggled to balance demanding work responsibilities with family obligations. Exceptional people shouldn't have to choose between career advancement and being present for their children's development, she'd argued with characteristic analytical precision, and Marcus had immediately approved the $10 million facility without hesitation. "Mr. Wellington," called out James Harrison, Tesla's chief technology officer, interrupting Marcus's thoughtful observations. "We're prepared to offer a comprehensive 5-year exclusive licensing agreement worth $2 billion with substantial additional performance bonuses that could bring the total value to $12 billion. But we need to understand the full scope. What other revolutionary technologies are you developing that we should be aware of for strategic planning purposes?" Marcus smiled, thinking about the 37 other cutting-edge projects currently in various stages of development across Morrison's dramatically expanded research division. "Mr. Harrison, what we've demonstrated today represents approximately 15% of our current technological capability. Dr. Morrison's extraordinary team is simultaneously working on wireless charging technology that could power vehicles while they're in motion, advanced solar integration systems that could eliminate the need for external charging entirely, and revolutionary energy storage solutions that could transform everything from smartphones to space exploration missions." The financial numbers being discussed were absolutely staggering, but Marcus had learned through experience that true success couldn't be measured in dollars alone. The comprehensive employee satisfaction surveys showed that 98% of staff were genuinely happy with their working conditions and professional growth opportunities, and Pinnacle had rapidly become the most sought-after employer in the entire technology sector. More importantly, they'd established a substantial charitable foundation that provided educational scholarships specifically to children of immigrant families, directly inspired by Sarah Chen's own remarkable journey from Taiwan to corporate leadership, despite facing discrimination and language barriers. "There's something else you should know," Dr. Morrison added, her eyes twinkling with the infectious excitement of a scientist on the verge of another groundbreaking discovery. "We've systematically identified 6 other brilliant researchers whose work was stolen by various corporations over the past decade. Marcus has authorized comprehensive legal action to restore their patent rights and offered them prestigious positions here at Morrison Advanced Technologies. We're not just building a successful company, we're building a powerful movement to protect innovation and reward genuine creativity." The revelation came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 8 months after Lucy's famous boardroom appearance, arriving like an earthquake that threatened to destroy everything they'd built. Marcus was reviewing quarterly financial reports in his office when Sarah Chen burst through his door, her normally composed face pale with shock and her hands trembling violently as she clutched a thick manila folder containing documents that would change their understanding of everything. "Marcus, we have a serious problem," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion and underlying fear. "A massive problem that completely changes everything we thought we knew about the Phoenix Dynamics situation and calls into question the safety of everyone involved in this case." Marcus immediately set aside his financial documents, recognizing the same intense analytical focus in Sarah's demeanor that had driven her to work through the night uncovering the original fraud 8 months earlier. Her dedication to uncovering truth, regardless of personal cost, had saved the company, but her current expression suggested they faced something far more dangerous. "What did you find?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the growing knot of apprehension in his stomach. Sarah opened the folder with shaking hands, revealing bank statements, complex corporate documents, encrypted email chains, and financial records that had clearly required considerable investigative effort and probably some legal risks to obtain. "Phoenix Dynamics wasn't working alone," she began, her analytical mind struggling to organize the overwhelming complexity of what she'd discovered. They were part of a much larger, more sophisticated operation, a systematic network of interconnected shell companies specifically designed to steal patents from independent researchers and small technology firms across multiple industries. The documents painted a deeply disturbing picture that made Marcus's stomach tighten with growing dread and anger. Phoenix Dynamics had been just one tentacle of an elaborate corporate octopus, controlled by Wellington Holdings, a company owned and operated by Marcus's own estranged uncle, Richard Wellington, who had been systematically stealing innovations and destroying careers for over 15 years, while specifically targeting his nephew's business interests. "This can't be right," Marcus whispered, studying a bank transfer record that showed $8 billion flowing from Phoenix Dynamics to Wellington Holdings just 3 days before the Meridian acquisition. "Richard and I haven't spoken in 20 years, not since he tried to steal credit for my first major deal when I was 25 and establishing my reputation." Sarah's expression grew even more grave as she revealed additional documents that showed the true scope of the conspiracy. "It gets much worse, Marcus. According to these detailed financial records and email communications, your uncle has been specifically targeting companies and technologies that you've shown interest in acquiring. The Meridian deal wasn't random bad luck. It was carefully designed to destroy your professional reputation and force Pinnacle Industries into bankruptcy so Wellington Holdings could acquire our valuable assets at a tiny fraction of their true market value." The realization hit Marcus like a devastating physical blow, making him feel dizzy and nauseous. His uncle hadn't just been stealing from random inventors for profit. He'd been orchestrating an elaborate, personal vendetta designed to destroy Marcus individually while profiting from the systematic theft of intellectual property from dozens of brilliant researchers whose careers had been ruined in the process. "There's more," Sarah continued grimly, pulling out a series of email exchanges between Richard Wellington and Phoenix Dynamics executives that revealed the personal nature of the attack. They specifically planned to time the Meridian collapse with your acquisition announcement. They wanted you to be publicly humiliated and terminated so that Pinnacle's board would panic and sell the company to the highest bidder. Wellington Holdings was prepared to purchase Pinnacle for just $800 million, a company that's now worth over $40 billion and growing rapidly. Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing frantically behind his desk as he processed the staggering magnitude of his uncle's betrayal and the personal hatred that had driven 15 years of criminal activity. Through his office windows, he could see employees going about their daily work, completely unaware that their company had been systematically targeted for destruction by a family member's greed and desire for revenge. "We have to contact the authorities immediately," Marcus said, his voice hardening with determination and righteous anger. "This isn't just corporate espionage. It's massive fraud that's destroyed the careers and lives of dozens of innocent researchers while threatening the jobs of hundreds of our employees." The FBI raid on Wellington Holdings occurred at dawn on a Friday morning, with federal agents simultaneously executing search warrants at 17 different locations across 3 states in a coordinated operation that had been planned for weeks. Marcus watched the live news coverage from his office, feeling a complex mixture of vindication, sadness, and relief as his Uncle Richard was led away in handcuffs, his usually immaculate silver hair disheveled and his aristocratic appearance completely destroyed by the humiliating perp walk that photographers captured from every possible angle. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, the lead investigator on the case and a specialist in complex financial crimes, had briefed Marcus the previous evening about the truly staggering scope of what their investigation had uncovered. "Your uncle's criminal operation was far more extensive and sophisticated than we initially realized," she'd explained with professional precision, spreading dozens of photographs, financial documents, and evidence charts across the large conference table. "We've identified 43 separate victims over 15 years, including Dr. Morrison. The total estimated value of stolen intellectual property exceeds $50 billion. The number was so astronomical that Marcus had difficulty processing its full implications for the technology industry. 43 brilliant inventors and researchers had been systematically cheated out of their life's work, their groundbreaking innovations stolen and sold to competitors while they struggled with legal battles they couldn't afford to fight and professional reputations that had been deliberately destroyed through corporate smear campaigns. The most disturbing aspect of this case," Agent Walsh had continued, her voice reflecting the gravity of what they'd discovered, "is how incredibly sophisticated their legal strategy was. Your uncle employed teams of specialized lawyers specifically trained to identify promising young researchers who lacked the financial resources to defend their patents. They would then create elaborate shell companies to acquire their work through fraudulent contracts and intimidation before selling those innovations to legitimate corporations at enormous profits. Now, watching his uncle's arrest broadcast live on every major news network, Marcus found himself thinking about the devastating human cost of Richard's greed and vindictive obsession. 43 careers derailed or destroyed, countless families damaged by financial stress and professional humiliation, and revolutionary innovations delayed or lost entirely because their creators had been forced to abandon their research when their patents were stolen and their reputations systematically attacked. Sarah Chen appeared in his office doorway, holding a steaming cup of coffee, and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who had spent months meticulously building an airtight case that would stand up to any legal challenge. "The FBI wants to meet with our legal team next week to discuss comprehensive victim compensation," she said, settling into one of the comfortable chairs across from his desk. "They're proposing a substantial restitution fund that could return stolen patents to their rightful owners and provide significant financial compensation for damages and lost opportunities." Marcus nodded approvingly, but his attention was focused on something more personally meaningful than legal procedures. Through his office windows, he could see Lucy in the childcare center, enthusiastically leading a group of younger children in what appeared to be a fascinating science experiment involving vinegar, baking soda, and colorful food coloring. At 9 years old, she was already displaying the same curious intelligence and natural teaching ability that had made her mother such a valuable analytical asset. "Sarah, I want to establish something far more comprehensive than just basic restitution," Marcus said, his voice filled with unwavering determination. "I want to create a permanent foundation that actively protects independent researchers from patent theft and provides them with the resources they need to succeed. We'll provide comprehensive legal support, substantial research funding, and professional business development assistance to inventors who can't afford to defend themselves against corporate predators." The ambitious idea had been forming in his mind for weeks, but seeing his uncle's arrest had crystallized his absolute commitment to ensuring that Richard's victims weren't the only ones who received justice. "We'll call it the Lucy Chen Foundation for Innovation Protection," he continued, smiling warmly as he watched the 9-year-old carefully help a younger child measure precise ingredients. Because sometimes the most important discoveries come from the people who ask the right questions, regardless of their age, background, or social status. Sarah's eyes filled with tears of pride and overwhelming gratitude as she processed the full scope of what Marcus was proposing. The foundation would be funded with $500 million from Pinnacle's rapidly growing technology licensing profits, creating a permanent resource for inventors facing corporate theft and ensuring that future generations of innovators would have protection against predatory business practices. 1 year after Lucy Chen walked into that boardroom and changed everything, Marcus stood before the largest gathering in Pinnacle Industries' illustrious history. The company's magnificent new headquarters, a gleaming 60-story architectural marvel that housed not only corporate offices, but also the world-renowned Morrison Advanced Technologies Research Complex and the groundbreaking Lucy Chen Foundation for Innovation Protection, buzzed with electric excitement as employees, researchers, honored guests, and media representatives filled the massive auditorium. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, now universally recognized as one of the world's leading battery technology innovators and a respected voice for research ethics, had just announced revolutionary developments that would make electric vehicles significantly cheaper than traditional gasoline cars within 2 years. The 43 researchers whose patents had been systematically stolen by Wellington Holdings were all present as honored guests, having received full attribution for their work along with comprehensive compensation totaling $2 billion. Many had joined Pinnacle's dramatically expanded research division, creating the most innovative and ethically managed technology development team in corporate history. But Marcus found his attention naturally focused on the front row, where 9-year-old Lucy Chen sat proudly beside her mother, wearing a beautiful red dress and displaying the kind of confident, genuine smile that only comes from knowing you've made a lasting difference in the world. Sarah Chen, now Senior Vice President of Strategic Analysis and one of the most respected executives in the technology industry, supervised a dedicated team of 47 researchers whose meticulous work had uncovered 12 additional cases of corporate patent theft across various industries worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice carrying easily through the auditorium's state-of-the-art sound system and reaching millions of viewers watching the live broadcast. 1 year ago, a remarkable little girl walked into our boardroom and taught us the most important lesson in business. That wisdom doesn't depend on age, titles, education, or social status. It depends on having the courage to ask the right questions and the unwavering determination to seek the truth, even when powerful people want you to stay silent. The audience erupted in sustained, thunderous applause that lasted for several minutes, but Lucy simply waved cheerfully and naturally, completely comfortable with the attention while remaining focused on the more important aspects of what they'd accomplished together as a team. Her mother had taught her that recognition was nice, but real success was measured by how many people you helped along the way and how much positive change you created in the world. Today, I'm incredibly proud to announce that the Lucy Chen Foundation has provided comprehensive legal protection and substantial research funding to 127 independent inventors across 23 countries, Marcus continued with obvious pride. We've successfully prevented 34 cases of patent theft, supported 89 breakthrough innovations that will benefit millions of people, and created economic opportunities that will strengthen families and communities worldwide for generations to come. The statistics were genuinely impressive, but Marcus knew the real impact was far more personal and meaningful than any number could possibly capture. In the audience, he could see Dr. Morrison sitting with 5 other researchers who had joined Pinnacle after having their stolen patents restored and their professional reputations rehabilitated. Behind them sat dozens of families whose breadwinners had been able to continue their innovative work because someone had finally leveled the playing field between individual creators and corporate predators. But our most important achievement, Marcus said, his eyes finding Lucy's bright, intelligent face in the crowd, is the powerful reminder that every person, regardless of age, background, education, or circumstances, has unlimited potential to change the world for the better. Sometimes the most profound insights come from completely unexpected sources, and sometimes the bravest voices belong to people who others might overlook, dismiss, or underestimate. Lucy stood up spontaneously and began applauding enthusiastically, her infectious enthusiasm quickly spreading throughout the auditorium until everyone was on their feet in a standing ovation. But she wasn't applauding for herself. She was applauding for her mother, for Dr. Morrison, for all the researchers whose work had been restored, and for the knowledge that their late-night investigation had protected countless future inventors from similar theft and professional destruction. As the celebration continued around him, Marcus reflected on the remarkable chain of events that had brought them to this moment. A desperate mother working through the night to save her colleagues' jobs, a brave little girl willing to speak truth to power despite intimidating circumstances, a brilliant scientist finally receiving the recognition and resources her innovations deserved, a criminal uncle whose greed and vendetta had ultimately exposed a massive network of corporate theft affecting dozens of victims. The little voice that had changed everything had taught them that the most important treasures weren't hidden in corporate acquisitions or stock portfolios. They were found in the courage to do what's right, even when it costs more than taking shortcuts, and the wisdom to recognize that helping others succeed was the only path to lasting, meaningful achievement that creates positive change in the world.